AITA for my reaction when my family threw a cake at me over a $300,000 condo? My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm 30 years old, single, and for the past 2 weeks the proud owner of my own condo. When my grandmother Helen died, she left me a modest inheritance. It wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to cover a significant portion of a down payment. I had been saving religiously since my first job at 22, living in a tiny studio apartment, packing my lunch from home, and saying no to vacations my friends took without a second thought. While others were posting photos on Instagram from Caribbean beaches or showing off designer clothes, I was working overtime and putting every extra dollar into my savings account. So when I finally had enough, combining my savings and the inheritance, I bought a 2-bedroom condo in cash. No mortgage, no debt. Just mine. It's in an up-and-coming neighborhood, about a 15-minute drive from the office when traffic isn't bad. The previous owners had horrible taste in wallpaper, and the kitchen needed a major renovation, but I didn't care. I decided to do the work myself to save money. YouTube tutorials became my nightly entertainment. I was in the middle of tearing down some hideous floral wallpaper when my cell phone rang. It was my mom. "Sarah, honey, I need you to come over next Saturday for a family gathering," she said in that fake casual tone she uses when she's plotting something. "A family gathering? What's going on?" I asked, pausing my war against the wallpaper. "It's a surprise. Just make sure you're here at 4. And bring one of those chocolate cakes from the bakery near your new place." "Mom, seriously? What is this about?" I insisted immediately, suspicious. "It's just a family get-together. Megan is coming with Mark, and I invited your aunts, uncles, and cousins too." That made me frown. The entire extended family for a simple get-together was unusual. "Mom, tell me the truth." "It's a secret, Sarah, surprise. Just come, okay?" And she hung up. I shrugged and went back to the wallpaper. Whatever drama my mom was cooking up would have to wait. I had a home to fix. My sister Megan is 3 years younger than me. She's 27 and has been with her boyfriend, Mark, for about 4 years. They live in a rented apartment closer to downtown. Unlike me, Megan has always had it easier. She was a cheerleader in high school while I was on the debate team. She dropped out of college to find herself, while I finished my accounting degree. And somehow my parents never seemed to mind. Growing up, it was always Megan this and Megan that. When we were kids and both had dance recitals on the same weekend, guess which one my parents went to? When we graduated, they threw Megan a huge party for finishing high school, with a DJ, decorations, and tons of guests. My college graduation was celebrated with a quick dinner at a chain Italian restaurant in a strip mall. I still remember my 16th birthday party. A cake, a few relatives, and a simple dress. The next year, for Megan's Sweet 16, there was a rented hall, a band, flowers, a princess dress, and even a photo booth. When I asked why there was such a big difference, my parents said Megan needed more help building her confidence and with her social life. As if my debate tournaments and volunteer hours at the library didn't count. But I've never been one to make a scene. I just worked harder, saved more, and proved to everyone that I could take care of myself. The week flew by as I continued working on the condo. I managed to remove all the wallpaper and started applying primer to the walls so I could paint. The sense of accomplishment seeing the progress was worth every blister on my hands. When Saturday arrived, I got up early to finish painting the living room before heading to my parents' house. I stopped by the bakery my mom likes and bought a chocolate fudge cake just as she asked. As I drove to the house where I grew up, I wondered what this famous family gathering could be about. My parents' house is an older, 2-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It belonged to my grandmother Helen, and she left it to Megan and me in her will. We let our parents continue living there. Of course, it never occurred to us to do anything else. The house was full of childhood memories, both good and bad. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw several cars parked on the street. I recognized my Uncle Richard's truck and my Aunt Carol's minivan. My cousin Mike's motorcycle was parked next to the garage. Whatever this was, it was definitely a full family meeting. I took a deep breath, grabbed the cake box, and walked in. "Sarah's here," my mom shouted as soon as I crossed the threshold. She gave me a quick hug and took the cake from my hands. "Perfect, just in time. We're about to sit down." I looked around the living room. Megan and Mark were on the couch, holding hands and whispering to each other. My dad was talking to Uncle Richard in a corner. Aunt Carol and my cousins were already heading toward the dining room. "What's going on?" I asked Megan as I approached. She just smiled mysteriously. "You'll see." That didn't help the unease growing in my stomach. I followed everyone to the dining room, where my mom had set the table with the good china, the kind she only brings out for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Whatever the announcement was, it was clearly important. I sat next to my cousin Mike, who seemed as lost as I was. "Do you know what this is about?" I whispered. He shook his head. "No idea. Your mom just said it was for some big news." They started passing the food around. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. The chocolate cake I had brought sat in the center of the table, reserved for dessert. Everyone talked about trivial things, carefully avoiding the subject that hung in the air. The tension was palpable. Finally, when everyone had a full plate, my mom stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to thank you all for coming today," she said, smiling from ear to ear. "We have wonderful news to share with you." She stood at the head of the table and looked at Megan with an even bigger smile. "Our dear Megan is pregnant," she announced. The table erupted in cheers, applause, and congratulations. Megan blushed while Mark put his arm around her shoulders. "And they're getting engaged," my mom continued. "We'll be starting to plan the wedding soon." I clapped along with everyone else, genuinely happy for my sister despite everything we carried between us. "Congratulations, Megan," I said, smiling at her from across the table. But my mom wasn't finished. She exchanged a look with my dad and Megan, then turned to me with an expression that tied a knot in my stomach. "That's not all," she said, her voice cutting through the table's murmur. "We have another announcement." The dining room fell silent. Everyone looked at my mom, including me. "As many of you know, Sarah recently bought a condo," she said, gesturing toward me. Several of my uncles nodded. Some mumbled a weak congratulations that they hadn't had a chance to give me when I shared the news 2 weeks earlier. "Sarah is 30 years old and single," my mom continued. "No husband, no children, not even a boyfriend." I felt the heat rise to my face. What did my relationship status have to do with this? Megan, on the other hand, my mom went on, is about to start a family. She and Mark need a place of their own, not just any rental. My heart started to pound as I realized where this was going. I glanced at Megan and Mark. Both were staring intently at their plates. My mom turned back to me, her smile now sharp. "Sarah, this is your chance to show how much you love your sister. To show how generous and good you are," she said. "I think you should give your new condo to Megan and Mark." The entire dining room went mute. The whole table. I stared at my mom, waiting for her to finish with an, "I'm just kidding." But it never came. "You can go back to renting," she added with a light tone, as if she wasn't talking about the condo I worked 8 years for. "You don't need that much space just for yourself." I looked around the table. My dad was nodding in agreement with my mom. Megan finally looked up. Her face was a mixture of embarrassment and expectation. "That's a lovely idea," Aunt Carol chimed in. "Family should always come first." Several other relatives nodded emphatically. This wasn't a spontaneous suggestion. It was an ambush. "You can't be serious," I managed to say. "Of course we are," my mom replied, her voice hardening. "Your sister needs it more than you do." I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Let me get this straight. You want me to give Megan my condo? The condo I worked 60-hour weeks for years to afford. The one I bought with Grandma's inheritance and 8 years of savings. You want me to just hand it over because Megan got pregnant?" "Sarah," my dad interrupted in a warning tone, "don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I let out a humorless laugh. "I worked for that condo. I earned every single cent. No one helped me. But Megan needs." My mom started. "No," I cut her off. "Absolutely not. I am not giving my condo to Megan. It's mine. I earned it." Megan started to cry, placing a hand over her still flat stomach. Mark glared at me as if I had just kicked a puppy. "How can you be so cold?" my mom demanded, her face red with fury. "She's your own sister. And how can you ask me to give up everything I've worked for?" I shot back. Why doesn't Megan work and save like I did? The relatives began to murmur among themselves. I caught phrases like, how materialistic, and she was always the difficult one. She's always been like this, my mom spat. Always thinking only of herself. I am not giving her my condo, I repeated, looking her straight in the eye. The subject is closed. Then something happened that I still remember in slow motion. My mom picked up the chocolate cake I had brought, the one still untouched in the center of the table, and threw it at me with unexpected force. The cake hit me square in the face. Frosting and chocolate spread across my cheeks, ran down my neck and stained my blouse. The entire dining room fell silent. I slowly wiped the frosting from my eyes, letting chunks of cake fall to the floor. My dad and Megan didn't look surprised or horrified, but rather satisfied, as if they had finally put me in my place. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and keys and walked out of the house, still covered in cake. The yelling started behind me. Ungrateful, my mom shrieked. We should disown you, my dad yelled. How could you do this to us? Megan sobbed. I got to my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. Somehow I managed to drive to my condo, the chocolate drying on my skin. I collapsed onto the old second-hand couch I'd brought from my rental, trying to process what had just happened. It didn't take long for my cell phone to start vibrating. I had calls from my parents and Megan, and text messages coming in one after another. You're overreacting. Just give them the condo. I can't believe how selfish you're being. After everything we've done for you, your pregnant sister needs a home. I turned my phone off and tossed it aside. I thought about that phrase. After everything we've done for you. I thought about my entire life. When we were kids and both needed new school clothes, Megan got the nice brand name outfits. I got whatever was on the clearance rack. When we both applied for summer camps, my parents paid for Megan's art camp, but told me the debate camp I wanted was too expensive. For Megan's Sweet 16 there was a hall, a DJ, and a dessert table. For mine a homemade cake and 2 relatives. And now they expected me to give them my condo. The one big thing I had achieved all by myself. I thought about the house where we had been sitting an hour earlier. My grandmother's house, the one she left in equal parts to Megan and me. My parents lived there because we allowed them to, not because they legally owned it. I owned 50% of that house just like Megan. Suddenly, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next day, I woke up with a clear plan in my head. I went to my file cabinet and found the folder labeled Grandma Helen's Will. Inside was the document confirming what I already knew. Megan and I were co-owners 50-50 each. My parents were only listed as residents. I was about to call a lawyer when my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. My mom had tagged me in a post. With a sinking feeling, I opened the app. I almost dropped my phone when I saw the words. It breaks my heart to have to share this. It read. But sometimes family disappoints you in the worst way. Yesterday, my daughter Sarah refused to help her pregnant sister Megan when she needed it most. Despite having the means to do so, Sarah chose selfishness over family. As a mother, I have never felt so heartbroken. Pray that Sarah finds compassion in her heart. The post already had dozens of comments, mostly from relatives and acquaintances. I was there. Sarah was cruel to poor Megan. Some people don't understand what family means. Keeping a condo all to herself when her sister is expecting a baby. Shameful. No one mentioned that my mom had thrown a cake in my face. No one questioned why I should have to give away the condo I worked so hard for. My mom was orchestrating a public shaming campaign against me. It was in that moment that something inside me snapped. The last thread of family loyalty was severed. I picked up my phone and searched for a real estate lawyer near me. I called the first number that appeared. Miller Law Group. Good morning, a receptionist answered. I need to speak with an attorney about property rights, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Mr. Robert Miller, a man in his 50s with a sharp gaze, who listened attentively as I told him everything. Let me see if I understand this correctly, he said when I finished. You and your sister inherited a house from your grandmother. You have allowed your parents to live there rent-free. Now, after they demanded you give away your condo and humiliated you when you refused, you want to know your options regarding that house. Yes, I confirmed. I don't want to be vengeful, but they have shown me no respect or consideration. I need to know my rights. Mr. Miller reviewed the will and nodded. It's quite clear. You and your sister are co-owners 50-50. You can, at any time, force the sale of the property and the division of the assets between the two of you. It's called a partition action. What's the process? I asked. I will draft a formal notification stating your intention to sell. Your sister can either buy your share at fair market value, or the entire house must be sold, and the proceeds divided. Legally, your parents have no say in the matter. I took a deep breath. Do it, I said. I didn't think twice. The following days I focused on the condo. I finished painting the living room and moved on to tearing out the old carpet in the bedrooms. The physical labor helped me stop dwelling on the disaster with my family. I temporarily blocked my parents' and Megan's numbers. I needed silence to think clearly without their constant messages. 5 days after my meeting with Mr. Miller, my condo doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents, Megan and Mark, in the hallway. I didn't open the door. Sarah, we know you're in there, my mom shouted. Open up right now. We need to talk about that ridiculous letter. Open the door, Sarah, my dad thundered. Stop behaving like a child. I took my phone and started a voice recording, holding the microphone near the door. You're an ungrateful brat, my mom yelled. After everything we've done for you, you're going to make your own pregnant sister homeless? This is too much even for you, Megan whimpered. This is a new low, Mark added. I recorded every word, every threat, every insult they hurled for nearly 15 minutes. Finally, they got tired and left. The next day, I sent the audio file to Mr. Miller. He called me immediately. This is harassment, he said firmly. If this continues, we can request a protective order. But more importantly, their behavior only strengthens our position. It makes the level of hostility towards you very clear. A week later, Mr. Miller called with an update. Your family's lawyer has been in touch. They want to arrange a mediation. The mediation was scheduled for the following Monday at Mr. Miller's office. I arrived early in my best work attire, a dark blue pantsuit I usually wear for important client meetings. Mr. Miller greeted me with a calm smile. Remember, you have every legal right to do this, he told me. Don't let them make you feel guilty. My parents, Megan and Mark, arrived a few minutes later with their lawyer. My mom gave me a look of open contempt. Traitor, she muttered as she passed me. My parents' lawyer began by explaining their position. He argued that selling the house would cause them enormous emotional and financial hardship. Mr. Miller countered by presenting the hallway recording and the Facebook posts as evidence of the hostile treatment I had received. After nearly 2 hours of back-and-forth negotiations, the lawyer stepped out to speak privately. They returned with a proposed agreement. The house will be sold, and the proceeds will be divided equally between Sarah and Megan, as stipulated in the grandmother's will, their lawyer said. My mom burst into tears upon hearing this. Please, Sarah, she sobbed, suddenly changing her tune. We're your family. How can you do this to us? Forgive me for the cake. I lost my temper, but we're your parents. I looked at her, saw her tears, real or not, and remembered all the times I had let her treatment of me slide. All the times I accepted being second best, the responsible one, the one who gives in. I remembered the cake on my face, the words on Facebook, the shouts in my condo hallway. The house is going to be sold, I said in a low voice. That's final. Mr. Miller nodded and began preparing the written agreement. As we waited, I could feel my family's hatred boring into me as if it were a physical force. This time I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was standing up for myself. The next 2 months were a blur of legal paperwork and visits from real estate agents. The market was strong, and the house was in a desirable neighborhood, so it sold faster than I expected. After closing costs and commissions, Megan and I each received a significant sum, about enough for a down payment on a small house. I never spoke directly with my family during that time. All communication went through the lawyers. Mr. Miller told me my parents were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They had been living for years in a property that wasn't theirs, contributing little more than basic maintenance. And what will they do now? I asked in our final meeting. Your sister decided to use her share as a down payment on a new house, he explained. Your parents will be moving in with her and Mark. They took out a mortgage for the rest. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty. In effect, I had forced my parents out of the house where they had lived for so many years. But another part, the one that remembered the cake and the public humiliation, felt vindicated. And you? Mr. Miller asked. What do you plan to do with your share? An investment portfolio, I replied. I'm working with a financial advisor to put together something with mutual funds, bonds, and a little real estate investment. Good decision, he said. Well, if there's nothing else, we're done here. I shook his hand. Thank you for everything, I said. Leaving his office, I felt lighter, as if I had finally left a great weight on the table. The weight of always being the responsible one, the one who yields, the one who sacrifices so others can be comfortable. Back in my condo, I looked around. The transformation was enormous. I had replaced the carpet with hardwood floors, painted every room, updated the kitchen with new appliances, and installed modern light fixtures throughout the place. It looked nothing like the home I bought 3 months ago. Now it was truly mine in every sense. My cell phone rang. It was a friend from work, Laura. Hi, Laura, I answered. Sarah, how are you holding up? She asked with a concerned tone. We talked for a while about the family drama. She already knew some of it because she had seen me come into the office with red eyes after the cake incident. I'm okay, I said. And as I said it, I realized it was true. The sale of the house is final. The money is in my account. And your family? She asked. I sighed. That's still a mess. I haven't spoken to any of them. I hear things through mutual friends. What things? She wanted to know. Megan's wedding was last month, I said. A small ceremony, just the closest family. I paused. Obviously, I wasn't invited. I'm sorry, Sarah, Laura said. Don't be. I wouldn't have gone anyway. And it was true. She's about to have the baby. They say it's a boy. And are you sure you're okay with all this? With not knowing your nephew? Laura asked. I thought for a few seconds. He's going to grow up hearing that I'm the villain of the story. They'll tell him that his Aunt Sarah didn't want to give them her condo and that because of me, they had to sell Grandma's house. They won't mention how they treated me my whole life. Laura was quiet for a moment. Families are complicated, she finally said. That's putting it mildly. I let out a dry chuckle. Honestly, Laura, I don't think they ever saw me as family, just as a resource like a walking bank account. Do you think you'll ever reconcile? She asked. No, not unless they acknowledge what they did and truly apologize, I replied. I knew that was never going to happen. My parents had spent a lifetime favoring Megan. They weren't going to become self-aware overnight. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the small balcony. The evening sky was orange. If someone had told me 6 months ago that I would be estranged from my entire family, I would have fallen apart. Now, however, I felt a sense of peace. My phone vibrated with a text from another mutual friend. Megan had the baby. Healthy boy. Everyone's fine. I stared at the screen waiting to feel something powerful. Sadness, anger, nostalgia. But I only felt a distant sort of detachment, like when you hear news about someone you barely know. I knew they were all living together now. Megan, Mark, the baby, and my parents, in the house they bought with Megan's share and a 30-year mortgage. They would be paying off that loan well into their old age. I couldn't feel pity. They had shown me very clearly who I was to them. Not a daughter, not a sister, not a future aunt. Just a resource to be squeezed when it was convenient. A bank account. My condo was quiet when I went back inside. Some would call it loneliness. I called it tranquility. I painted these walls with my own hands. I installed these floors. Every corner of this place represented my independence and my decision to no longer be used. On a shelf, I had a small box with the only family photos I wanted to keep. Pictures of my grandmother and me. She always treated Megan and me equally. Maybe she saw what was happening, how my parents were tilting the scales, and wanted to balance things by leaving the house to both of us. Thanks, Grandma, I whispered, touching the box. I had no desire to hear from the rest of my family. The ball was in their court and I suspected it would stay there forever. I was done sacrificing myself for people who would never do the same for me. I always thought family meant unconditional love and support. Now I understood something different. Real family doesn't ask you to lose everything so they can be comfortable, and they certainly don't throw a cake in your face when you say no. My cell phone remained silent. There were no calls from my mom asking for forgiveness, no text messages from my dad acknowledging his favoritism, not a single note from Megan thanking me for the years I lived in her shadow without protest. And I was okay with that. I had my condo, my investments, my job, and friends who actually cared about me. I had a life I had built for myself, dollar by dollar, decision by decision. And for the first time, it was all mine. Comment. Setting boundaries with the people we love the most is often the hardest thing we will ever have to do. True family should be a source of unconditional support, not a place where your kindness is constantly exploited. Walking away from an unhealthy dynamic is never an act of cruelty, but rather a necessary step toward self-preservation and healing. You have every right to protect the life, peace, and security you have built with your own hard work. Love should never require you to sacrifice your own well-being just to keep others comfortable. I hope this reminds you that it is perfectly acceptable to choose your own mental health over feelings of misplaced guilt. Sometimes the most nurturing environment is found in the family we choose for ourselves along the way. Healing begins the moment you decide to stop accepting disrespect and start valuing your own self-worth. Please feel free to share your experiences with setting healthy boundaries in the comments below. I wish you all the courage to create a life filled with genuine peace and mutual respect. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.